to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, I'm Connie Daggett. I work here for the City of Brewton, and next we have just a really quick presentation by Steve Layton about the upcoming census. We hope you're all as excited about it as we are, because very much of our future depends on an accurate count. We need everybody, especially children, everybody you know needs to be counted for this next census, and Steve will tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you, Connie. Good evening. According to the state, the reality of the upcoming census for 2020 is that Alabama is projected to show a slow population growth. That translates into a loss of federal assistance dollars and puts the state in danger of losing a congressional seat following the census. That means, for us, less voice at the federal level. Our state will suffer. There's a statewide focus with extra attention placed on hard-to-count counties, and we are one of those hard-to-count counties. While Brewton is included in that area, our city response to previous census projects has exceeded the norm. Inside that hard-to-count county area and cities are the following categories Connie just mentioned: young children, renters, minorities, the unemployed, low-income persons, the homeless, those who distrust government, those with physical disabilities, and adults who are not high school graduates. Those who have not participated in previous censuses have attributed that to a lack of awareness, or maybe they're apathetic. They're not actively engaged with the importance of it for themselves, or they have distrust issues. They have concerns regarding their privacy or the belief that they can remain undetected or off the grid. They have no idea that federal funding assistance is actually based on the population of a given geographic area. Thanks to law and ship, every resident in the Brewton city limits has already gained a latitude and longitude associated with it. That is to assist us in an accurate count of housing, and updates for new construction or demolition will also be recorded. Here in Brewton, we will be reaching out to these community and neighborhood leaders who can answer questions for our citizens. The public needs to see familiar faces involved with the census to help them understand the importance of each of us being counted, so that we, as the City of Brewton, are not discounted. This will be the first time that the census will be accomplished online. Brewton is prepared to provide services to its citizens in making the census a very easy process. We have a newly renovated library that is a critical part of providing services to our citizens. Other small cities like Brewton are utilizing their libraries as a source of information and assistance for completing the census. I've already spoken with Lynn Likely, and we're looking to create a private space within the Brewton Public Library where citizens can get information and assistance in processing their census information. The facility at the J.L. Fisher Center will be another location where residents can find convenient information and assistance for accomplishing the census. What's at stake? During the last census, Alabama lost out. We failed to count 101,800 Alabama household residents. If we fail at that level again, it will cost our state $1.6 billion in federal dollars. This is money that is attributed to Alabama unless we fail to claim it by our population count. What federal money would we lose? Medical assistance programs like Medicaid, highway planning and construction, grants to education, school lunch programs, Head Start programs, housing assistance, child care development, just to name a few. Let's start the conversation in Brewton about what the 2020 census really is and what it really isn't. There's a great deal at stake for our city and our state if we fail to make ourselves count. Thank you.
We're all looking forward to that count. Now, without further ado, Mayor-elect Lovelace will come and make a wonderful introduction, I'm certain.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I come from a family of 5 brothers and sisters, and we talk a lot with each other on the phone, and I was talking to my older sister the other day, and she said, "Dang, you know Doug Jones is coming to Brewton?" You know he's a United States Senator. I said, "Sharon, I know. Well, y'all don't have enough chairs?" I said, "Well, we're going to get as many as we can." I said, "Well, y'all have some water out for us." I said, "Sharon, let me be the mayor, and you handle the law." A little while later, I was talking to Barney, and Barney, my other brother, another brother who's a lawyer, says, "Yeah, you know Doug Jones?" I said, "Barney, don't start." My pleasure today to introduce Senator Doug Jones and welcome him to Brewton. I had to make a long introduction because of my sister, so I apologize, but I hope you'll tell her I did very well and that you were excited. But Senator Doug Jones spent his life working to make Alabama a better place. Born in Fairfield in 1954 to a U.S. steel worker and a stay-at-home mom, he grew up in Alabama during a period of great change and played a critical role in helping the state and her people overcome some of their darkest days. After graduating from Cumberland School of Law at Samford University, he worked as a staff counsel to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee for Senator Howell Heflin, and later returned home to serve as an assistant United States attorney. President Clinton later nominated him to become United States attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, where he served until June 2001. It was while holding that position that Senator Jones successfully prosecuted 2 of the 4 men responsible for the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church, finally bringing full justice and closure to nearly 40 years after the attack that killed 4 young girls. Along with taking on the Ku Klux Klan, he indicted domestic terrorist Eric Rudolph and prosecuted other criminals who sought to use fear, hatred, and violence to inhibit the rights of others. As senator, he has fought to increase access to affordable health care for every Alabamian, including expanded Medicaid in Alabama. He has worked across the aisle to pass legislation to help our farmers, to shed light on civil rights era cold cases, and to expand access to broadband in our rural communities. For his efforts, he was named as one of the most bipartisan members of the U.S. Senate. He has earned a National Rural Health Champion Award and was honored by the League of Southeastern Credit Unions as Federal Lawmaker of the Year in 2018. It's my pleasure to introduce Senator Doug Jones.
That was just the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you all for coming. It's great to be back in Brewton. It's great to see some old friends here in town. I really appreciate the mayor and his words and being here tonight. Connie, thank you. Where did Connie go? She slipped out. But there she is, coming in the back. Thanks for letting me come out here for a few minutes. I want to start real quick by just reiterating what was said about the census. We talk about it everywhere. I hope you paid attention, because it is so important to this state right now. We are at a critical juncture, and it can go good or bad for us. If we don't get everybody out, it's going to go bad. We've got a lot at stake here, so please get the churches, get the schools, get the PTAs, get your friends, your neighbors. Everybody needs to get engaged in the census as it comes through in the next year or so. I will spend a little bit of time and tell you a few things about what we're doing. talk about a couple things going on in Washington, but also I'm mainly here just to kind of listen, to get your questions. The questions are important to me because they let me know what you're thinking. You don't have to ask a question. You can always just, if you've got something to say, I'm here to listen. That's why we're doing. We're going around the state. Have been doing that most of this week and a good bit of last week in the 2-week recess that we had here. That's what I've done. I've been all over the state from one end of the state to the other. So I want to talk a little bit about where I am in the Senate right now. I got sworn in January the 18th. We didn't have a whole lot of time to put together a staff, but we did a great job. We've got an amazing staff in Washington, D.C. and here in the state. In Alabama, I've got an office in Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile. We got a satellite. We've now got somebody full-time in Selma. Got an office in Dothan that we man part of the time. So we've got folks all over the state, and they do a great job helping folks with whatever needs that they have on a local level, helping put things together for me to move around the state. In Washington, I am on 3 major committees. I'm also on another committee that doesn't do a lot of legislation. That's the Special Committee on Aging. We don't do legislation there, but we do a lot of great work for seniors, whether it's Social Security, whether it's Alzheimer's research, pancreatic cancer, all the things that, fraud and abuse of the elderly. Those are the kind of things that we have the hearings on. But the legislative committees are really active. I'm on the Banking Committee, which is actually Banking Housing Committee. We've done a lot of work in that space since I first got up there. Last year, one of the first things that we did, for if there's any bankers in here, we kind of rolled back some of the regulations that Dodd-Frank law was put on banks after the meltdown in 2008. That was a much needed piece of legislation. There were a lot of things wrong in the financial system, and the Dodd-Frank legislation was really good. But as time went on, everything... Yes. See, the Lord agrees with me that it was a bad, as time went on, though, it became pretty clear that there were certain regulations that were put on mid-sized banks and smaller banks that were a little too onerous, that they really weren't needed to help stop another economic collapse. And so we were able to modify those a little bit, try to relieve the pressure off the banks and credit unions some, the mid-size and low ones, not the big boys who were systemic to our system. But it really was a good piece of legislation. We're still doing a good bit of work. In that committee, we hear the Federal Reserve Chairman comes and talks to us at least once a year, usually twice a year. He was in my office with me just the other day. We're looking at a lot of different things. We're looking at everything from cryptocurrencies, which I still don't know what the hell that is, but we're looking at those. We're looking at financial regulations and what we can do to make the system better. A couple of weeks ago, right before we left Washington, along with Senator Cotton from Arkansas and Senator Rounds from Indiana and Senator Warner from Virginia, we filed a bill to upgrade our money laundering laws that haven't been upgraded. That doesn't sound real sexy, but the fact is that those laws needed to be updated because they were done years ago just to kind of stop drug dealers. But now we've got all kind of financial crimes. We've got human trafficking crimes. We've got all manner of things that we're trying to stop, and the financial institutions need more help with law enforcement. This is going to be a really good bill. It's really an important bill. We spent 1.5 years working on it before we filed it. I'm hopeful it'll get going. We're doing work in housing. Housing, I don't know, Mayor, if that's a huge issue here, but I'll tell you around the state it is. Affordable housing is an issue all over the state. So we're looking at trying to ways that we can get the federal government engaged to get people into affordable housing, whether it's young folks wanting to buy a house that can't afford the down payment, whether it is seniors that need a inexpensive place to live. Veteran housing and homelessness is a real problem in our veterans population. So we've got a lot of issues that we're dealing with that. The 30-year mortgage has been a little bit under assault. That is what got most people into the home ownership business. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who guarantees most of those, have been in receivership, trying to get those out. So we've got a lot happening in that committee. The other committee is the HELP committee. It's HELP, Health, Education, Labor, Pensions. Education is always an issue. We are working with workforce development issues across the state, trying to get businesses engaged with trying to get folks into the schools to do more apprenticeships, to do those kind of things, to give some jobs for the 21st century, for Alabama's 21st century economy. We've got a manufacturing economy here, and we need to get people on the floor of those manufacturing facilities. A lot of those don't require a 4-year college degree or even a 2-year college degree, but kids, we've got to get in there. Those are really good paying jobs. I mean, with benefits, they're $50,000, $60,000 a year, and it doesn't prevent people from going to college later on if they want to. But that's going to be the future, I think, of Alabama's workforce. As we try to develop more businesses in, they're going to be mainly manufacturing businesses. And that's what we're trying to get that workforce in. We're trying to do things with higher education. We got $1 trillion worth of student debt, more than $1 trillion, and it is just overburdening so many people. Alabama has got some of the, on a per capita basis, we got some of the most student debt of anybody in the country. It's extraordinary the amount of student debt that people have. We're trying to figure that out. It is a complicated issue. You're not going to see all of a sudden somebody get elected president and they're going to wipe out all the student debt. That's not going to happen. It can't happen. There's too much of it out there. We can't afford it. That's not going to happen. We got to figure out ways that we can both reduce it, but going forward, trying to reduce the amount of debt that kids take. You do that, I think, in a couple of ways. Number one, try to reduce the cost of going to college, a 2-year college or a college in general. And there's ways I think you can do that, but I think we need to be more transparent. I think as people go into college, they need to know exactly what that's going to cost. Colleges are doing a better job of that, but they're still giving you tuition and books and fees and an estimated cost of housing. And anybody that's ever gone to college, put a kid through college, knows there's just really more to that. You got to just up that. So we've got to be more transparent. And the other thing about transparency is, as a kid's going into college, as somebody's trying to get that degree, they really need to know how much they're going to make when they get out. Because they don't need to get strapped with $100,000 worth of debt if they're only going to make $35,000 a year or even $40,000 a year. So there's a combination of things that we need to do a better job of. And part of this goes back to just general financial literacy. I don't think we're really teaching our kids financial literacy. I can tell you as a father, my kids don't know it because they keep coming to me for money constantly and they're all grown. So we really have to do a better job of teaching kids what it means to balance a checkbook, what it means to make sure that they are looking long term. And because part of this is also tied to retirement. We got a retirement issue, a savings issue in this country, and it's going to start coming home to roost in a few years because people are not saving for retirement after the meltdown. They just can't. They're still living paycheck to paycheck, even though our economy is moving pretty good. We're also doing a lot of work in the health. That to me is still one of the biggest issues in Alabama is health care. We're still losing rural hospitals. Some of them are teetering on the verge of closing. We've lost like 7 in the last 8 or 9 years. We've lost 13 total in the state of Alabama. And when you start losing health care in the community, you're going to lose the community sooner or later. You're not going to attract businesses. Those that are here are going to leave. Kids are not going to stay around. They're going to want to have their families elsewhere. So we're trying to work on that. And there's several things that we're trying to do. Number one, we were successful in trying to get the Medicare folks to change the reimbursement level. Many of you may not know, but Alabama's doctors and hospitals get reimbursed based on what's called the wage index. And that's a formula based on wages, and it's a weird formula that I can't really get into. But Alabama's been at the bottom of the barrel for the last 20 years or more. We've been getting like 67 cents on the dollar, which is you can't compete with that. You can't compete with states that are getting $1 or even more. So the Alabama delegation for the last 15, 20 years has been trying to get that changed. Everybody's been writing letters and talking about it for a long time. But this year, after I got in and started talking to Senator Shelby and Congresswoman Sewell about it, we decided to take it one step further, and we called the CMS director, Ms. Verna, and asked her to come meet us and sit down and have a face-to-face meeting about this. And she came over and she was actually prepared. She looked at what we were saying, what we were doing, and she got it. And lo and behold, about 6 months later, she called me and announced that they were going to do a new rule. So Alabama's going to get that wage index up. It's still not going to be dollar for dollar, but it's going to bring in some $40-something million to the state of Alabama that will help our hospitals. It's a big, big change for Medicare reimbursements. But that's only part of the equation, especially for rural hospitals. The other part is Medicaid. You know, Alabama did not expand Medicaid when we had the opportunity to years ago. We've missed out on literally billions of dollars, mainly your dollars. Medicaid dollars are there, they're at this level, and they're going, all these dollars that you're paying into Medicaid are going elsewhere. And the reimbursements are going elsewhere to other folks that are, because they're not coming back to the state of Alabama. If we were to expand Medicaid in this state, we'd have over 300,000 people, your neighbors. And I looked at some of the figures. You've still got a lot of folks in this county, higher than the state average, that doesn't have health insurance in this county. A lot of those people are working people. They're working people, but they just are above that Medicaid threshold right now, but they can't afford the insurance. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and those folks could get health insurance if we could expand Medicaid. It would bring in a couple $1 billion a year, which would help the local economy in Brewton and everywhere else. Think about that kind of money that's coming in. And I know that people think there's a cost, and there is a cost associated, but you know what? Alabama spends a lot of money investing in industry. We give tax incentives, we spend a lot of money for businesses to come in. I don't think we invest in our citizens' health the way we should have, or we would be one of the most unhealthy states in the country. We're a poor state, we need Medicaid expansion, and we need it now. And that's a position we've been arguing for a long time. I've got a number of bills pending as well that really go to the heart of maternal health and infant mortality. As I said, Alabama continues to be an unhealthy state, but we're particularly bad when it comes to infant health and maternal health. We have one of the highest rates of infant mortality of any state in the country. We have one of the highest rates of maternal mortality. So we're doing things to try to change that. We're doing things like the Mama Act, which will expand Medicaid for pregnant women. Right now, you can get a Medicaid expansion for pregnant women, but only until 60 days after the birth of that child. We want to expand that to 12 months because I know, I've never given birth to a child, but I know I've got 3 children, and I know that it takes a lot longer than 60 days for that child and that mom to really get to where you feel comfortable with their health. And right now, get on Medicaid. If you're not qualified, you can get on Medicaid once you get pregnant, but it's gone after 60 days. So that health insurance dries up after 60 days. So what do those women and children do? It's tough, and people don't turn them down, but those are the women that have to take their children to an emergency room for routine health care, and that's just unacceptable. So we're doing an awful lot in that area. I really was proud of the award from the Rural Hospital Health Association last year that they gave me because we've had to focus. I really believe if we can get our rural health crisis under control, the state of Alabama is going to move in much, much greater forward, and both economically as well as just our well-being, because we are at the bottom of the barrel in so many places there. The other committee that I'm on is Armed Services. I'll just touch on that briefly. It's an incredibly important committee for the state of Alabama. My first year in the Senate, I was on Homeland Security. I was able to secure a seat on Armed Services this year. I will tell you folks, I wish everybody could see how much Alabama really contributes to the security of this country. What Alabama does for our national defense is just extraordinary. Whether it's Redstone Arsenal or the Anniston Army Depot, Maxwell Air Force Base, Fort Rucker, the Alsta Shipbuilding in Mobile, it is amazing. And it's not only for the American security, it's Alabama's economy. It is billions of dollars that come in from the federal government every year to support our nation's military. We were able to do a lot of things. It was an eye-opening experience, I got to tell you. I took my first trip to Afghanistan and Iraq last April. And it's been an eye-opening experience to learn where we are, to hear these commanders from all over the world about what we're doing. And one of the things I will tell you, we've got a defense authorization bill that's working through Congress. We're having to up the money that we're spending. We're having to modernize our weapon systems, whether it is the nuclear triad or our submarines, our planes, or our ships. And now, importantly, we've got a whole new domain for potential warfare in that space. I am still hopeful that Alabama is going to get Space Command up in Huntsville. We should get it. It's the logical place to put it, but we're waiting to see what the administration does. It has been a fascinating, really fascinating week. In our NDAA, I try to take care of military families, getting them a pay increase, trying to work with their housing, and also trying to help military veteran spouses to eliminate what's known as the widow's tax. We can talk about that later if anybody has any interest in what that is. It's really an unfortunate thing that the federal government's been doing for surviving spouses. Those are the big ticket items that we're trying to do every day. We've got, my normal week when we're in session is to get up there Monday. We have hearings on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and some on Thursdays. Votes up until Thursday afternoon, and then I come back to the state to try to travel around and see folks and learn so much. And that's where I really get so many great ideas. And that's why I'm here in Brewton, to hear from you, to get some great ideas. Now I'm going to mention two other things, and then we're just going to let y'all talk or ask questions or do whatever. Two of the hottest topics that are going in Washington right now. One is Syria. We've got a real problem. That's a very dangerous situation in Syria. And it's dangerous not only from the conflict that is now going on after Turkey has in fact invaded northern Syria. It is a long-term problem that we better get our arms around because the president just let his arms away. Now, I got to tell you, I was very, very disappointed, as is most of the Congress. I haven't read hardly anybody that has supported the president's actions for pulling completely out of Syria and letting the Turkish army invade northern Iraq. You got to remember a couple things. Number one, the Kurds were there with us. They were there with us, despite the flippant way that the President of the United States said that they weren't with us in Normandy in World War II. They were there to help us defeat ISIS. Can I say defeat? That's probably not a good word. ISIS has not been defeated. But they were there to help us destroy the caliphate that ISIS had taken. They were right there with us, and they're holding those fighters. Some 11,000 or 12,000 of the ISIS fighters are being held by the Kurds. They were with us. They fought with us. They fought alongside of us. They died. And now we're just basically telling them, you're on your own. We're just kicking them down the road. That is not the message that we need to be giving to our friends and allies. I am concerned about the message that the administration has been giving our friends and allies to begin with, and this is just going to make it worse. And if you just don't take my word for it, read the comments of people like Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the House, and Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, and Lindsey Graham, who's one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters. Read their comments about what's happening in Syria, and I'll tell you, something's got to be done, and we're going to end up having to put sanctions on Turkey, which is a NATO ally. But what they're doing is just totally unacceptable. And if the Kurds have to abandon those prisoners, those ISIS prisoners, and 11,000 or 12,000 ISIS fighters get back into the world, hang on. Hang on. And whether they go to Europe or somewhere else, they're coming after America. They always do. That is going to be their number one target. So this is a dangerous, dangerous situation that we're in with Syria, Northern, and Turkey. The last thing, of course, is the thing that so many people are talking about, but the media is just really going crazy with it, and that's the impeachment inquiry that the House is doing. Now, I'll go ahead and talk about it. There's not really a whole lot of questions I'll take. I can take them, but I will tell you exactly where I stand on this. You know, my position on all of this begins and ends with my oath. I took an oath when I became your U.S. Senator to support, defend, and protect the Constitution of the United States. That's where I start, that's where I end. That oath does not require me to give allegiance to the President. It doesn't require me to give allegiance to the Democratic Party, of which I'm a member, or the Republican Party. My oath is to the people and the Constitution, and to protect and defend that Constitution. And I have been very concerned. I've been very troubled. The fact of the matter is, this started out, and I said from the very beginning when I saw that so-called whistleblower complaint, that they were serious allegations that needed to be looked at. I've represented whistleblowers before. I've also represented people that had been the subject of a whistleblower complaint. I know that those are just roadmaps. They're not facts. There was a lot of hearsay, and that's not something to do a full. You don't remove a president based on hearsay. But there was a roadmap there, and the next thing that happened after that became public, the president released a transcript. And I would encourage people to follow the facts, not just the social media silos that everybody tends to get in, whether you watch MSNBC or Fox. We go out of the silos a little bit and look at the facts. Read that transcript. Read that complaint. It's really serious, and there's a lot of misconceptions about what was going on. And it's very troubling, folks. I got to tell you, this is a very troubling time, because clearly the president was using his office, in my view, clearly using his, in that conversation, using his office to try to get a foreign government of which we hold a lot of power over to do something for his campaign, and using his personal lawyer to do that, as well as your lawyer, the Attorney General of the United States. Now that raises a lot of troubling issues, but I will tell you this, we've got a long way to go. I have seen so many of my cases over the years, whether as a prosecutor or a defense lawyer, where one piece of evidence looks just damning. But when you look at all the facts, it ends up not being so important. But on the flip side of that, I've seen pieces of evidence that everybody just overlooked. They didn't think it was important, and the next thing you know, it's connecting a lot of dots. So the point I'm making is this. We've got a long way to go. This procedure is just starting. It is an investigation. People are trying to get to the facts. The president needs to help get to those facts, not obstruct the way he's doing it. I will tell you that the White House counsel's lawyer's letter to the Congress the other day was, in my view, just offensive, because it was basically, he had not read the Constitution of the United States. Read the Constitution. The House of Representatives has the sole power of impeachment. I don't know where that will go. And the second thing is, if articles of impeachment are voted on, then it comes over to the Senate for us to make a determination. There will be a trial. So think about this a little bit in the terms of a lawsuit, whether it's a civil or criminal case. The investigation is going on right now. If bills of impeachment are returned like an indictment may be returned, I'm going to be one of the jurors. And I don't think anybody would want folks to make up their mind before they see the facts. And that's what I've been trying to do. I'm catching hell for it, I got to tell you, from a lot of people who want me to tell people right now that I'm either going to vote to convict him or I'm not going to vote. I'm going to stand with him. That's crazy. That we need to get out of our partisan corners and look at this as the constitutional issue that it is. And it's a very serious constitutional issue. I wish we weren't going through it. I would wish this on any president of the United States. I wish we weren't going through this, but we are. And so we'll deal with it as it comes. And I'm building, and I'm learning, and I'm reading. I will get to the bottom of it as best I can with the abilities I've got to learn the facts. And I will make my decision based on the facts. And as I said in the beginning, I begin and I end with my oath. I will base it on the facts, but I'll also be true to my oath, because that's what I was elected to do, that's what I swore to do, and that's what I think is my obligation to do. And politics, I want to be fair, impartial, and the political aspect are not going to come into my consideration. So, with that, let's hear from you. Now, we were going to do some numbers, but this is not a, sometimes I get like really big crowds and it takes for a while. Let's just see, anybody got anything? We don't worry about the numbers just yet. If you got a question, we ought to have time to answer pretty much everybody's questions, except for me, I tend to talk too long. Yes, sir?
I need to stand up.
Just speak loud. There's a microphone right here.
All right. My name is Bob Mays. I'm from Hatton. I drove all the way down here to see you because you're a little late getting here. But one thing, I came to get a little more a positive feel, because I read this guy named Flowers in our papers, Atmore papers.
Yeah.
And, he doesn't say anything positive about your chances. And I just came to hear you say that either he doesn't know what he's talking about, or either they're tell me something positive.
Well,
you got a good chance.
I've known Steve Flowers a long time. He's just turned, quite frankly, he's just turned into a political hack. That's all he is. He's just a political hack doing the other side's bidding for him. I feel very good about where I am. I'm going to be your senator for another term beginning in 2021 after 2020 election. And the reason, and Flowers doesn't like to admit this, everybody talks about, well, I'm just this or I'm that, and they're not looking at my record. You look at my record, and I will put it up against any senator of either party anytime, because I'm doing things for the people of this state. I'm an advocate for people of this state. Not everybody's going to agree with me all the time. They shouldn't. I mean, good Lord, my wife doesn't agree with me about half of the time. So I feel very good about my record. We have been, I tell my staff every time we've got a tough issue. We got easy votes and we got tough votes. The tough votes say, give me the pros, give me the cons, but the one thing I never want to hear is that you need to do this because of the politics of X. We're just not doing that. And so I think people of Alabama are going to see that. And the other thing is, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was named one of the 10 most bipartisan senators in the Senate. That's what we need. We need people, that's willing to have dialogues. I'm tired of folks talking on the left and the right from the extremes. And that's the only choices you get sometime. Well, you're going to have a different choice in Doug Jones. So I wish Steve had the sense to, actually follow my record instead of just spouting off.
He keeps saying because we're a Republican state, that's what you don't have a chance.
Well, you know what?
They got a good crowd here.
Yeah, no, let me tell you. If I'm not mistaken, we were a Republican state in 2017 when I won that race. So, thank you. Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
So, I know that when you said student loan debt would magically disappear, it was kind of a jab at my guy, and none of our people actually believe that, but I want to know how you feel about big corporations such as Amazon and Jeff Bezos not paying taxes to our country, that if perhaps they paid taxes, they could alleviate some of the debt for our student loans, or perhaps even Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax. Also wanted to thank you for holding town hall at a time when people could attend. I followed Brad Byrne, which gets pretty ugly on his page. He spends his entire page bashing you. That's what his whole run has been about, actually. And then, yes, you're probably not progressive enough for me, but I did vote for you last time, and I held my breath. And I was like, please let this man and
I'm assuming there's going to be a question in here somewhere.
So the question really is, what are your thoughts on corporations paying their fair share of taxes to help alleviate the student loan debt?
Well, I'm not sure we put those two together. Look, we have a huge debt in this country as well. I think everybody ought to pay their fair share of taxes, okay? I don't know if I want to earmark, and I don't want to go up on corporate taxes just to eliminate student loan debt when our debt is skyrocketing, in part because the wealthy got big tax cuts back in 2017, okay? So I think we have to have a balance on that. I wouldn't necessarily earmark those just to go to student loan debt, because the problem that we've got, our debt is going to catch up to us at some point. The debt for the country is also going to catch up to us. And we've got spending. We've got to find ways to produce more revenue in this country, and that doesn't necessarily mean raising taxes or wealth taxes and things like that. I'm not there on wealth taxes as much. I'm really kind of a capitalist kind of guy, a little bit, not where Bernie and my friend Elizabeth and Bernie are at all. So I'd push back on them if they got elected and I'm still in the Democratic caucus. I'm going to push back on some of those things. But I do think that there are things we can do. For instance, I do think that if we could figure out a way to pay for an infrastructure bill, it's not going to help the student debt. We've got to do other things to help student debt. But infrastructure bills will bring more revenue into this country, and if it brings more revenue into this country, we can lower our debt and maybe do some more programs, have more loan forgiveness programs to reduce the debt that we've got now. I really like the loan forgiveness programs. We got a shortage of teachers, we got a shortage of primary care physicians, we got a shortage of a lot of different things that we could fill if we could get the right loan forgiveness programs down there. It's a real issue.
So second part of that question, do you think that the massive push for college degrees led people to flee trade schools, which actually sometimes pay better?
Absolutely. There's no question about that. My parents pushed me. I'm glad they did. They pushed me, but I do think, I think it's a generational thing. At one point, everybody was just go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. And I think it has created an issue now for us. And everywhere I go around the state, I go to community colleges, I go to different things, apprenticeship programs, because I'd like to get kids looking at other avenues. I think it's really important, and I like to employ private business to get them. Around this state, we've got a number of really great businesses that are reaching out to the schools to try to get those apprenticeship programs. The unions are trying to do that. And that really, it's those jobs that built the middle class. I grew up in Fairfield. When I grew up in Fairfield was home to one of the largest steelmaking facilities in the country. You know, the middle-class workers there were the ones on the floor. You know, some of them had college degrees, but most of them didn't. But they've made great livings, and they built this middle class. And if we could get kids looking back, because I'll tell you something, if you hadn't been to a Honda or Mercedes manufacturing plant, man, it's unbelievable. It is like walking and watching the Jetsons prepare a car. I mean, it is really, and I think if we could get more people seeing what's out there in some of these really good paying manufacturing jobs, we can move away from that. It's really important. We're talking about the Perkins Career Tech is a way to try to get people into those jobs too. I co-authored the bill last year that we reauthorized that, so it's very important. I'll flip back and forth. I try to be very bipartisan, right to left. You know how it goes. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Senator Jones. My question is, we have so many young people that come out of high school trying to get to college. But once they get there, if the parents is not working, or if they own Social Security, then they don't have, these children don't have insurance. So I'd like to know, what is it? Because I've had this problem, that where the child was on my Social Security, when she turned 19 years old, it was wiped away. So college we had to pay for, insurance we had to pay for. So I'd like to know what is the senators and the representative can help to eliminate some of this, so our 19-year-olds that is not, can't get this kind of a help. What can you do for them?
Well, one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to increase the availability of Pell Grants. Because if somebody is coming from a family that's on Social Security, the odds are they're going to be eligible for Pell Grants. We need to expand that availability for Pell Grants. It would help defer those colleges. Now, health insurance is a different issue. Health is a different issue. And we've got, again, I think that part of that issue is expanding Medicaid. We really need to do that. I've got a bill pending in the Congress with Senator Warner that would give Alabama, and the 14 states didn't expand Medicaid. Only 14, and they're mostly in the South, which is kind of interesting if you really think about it politically. It's interesting. But if we could get this bill, it would give states another bite of the apple. It would give them those 3 years of 100% reimbursement. Then it would step it up, give everybody a chance. I think expanding Pell Grants to help kids in college or those trade schools that we're talking about, it doesn't have to be a college degree, would help. I think expanding Medicaid would help in those situations. And sometimes kids, work. If we can get them jobs and do the things in there, that those will help. But I think those two are the biggest things we've got right now going for us to help college kids coming from families that on Social Security. There's a lot of availability. One of the drawbacks to Pell Grants and financial aid for kids is this FAFSA form, this financial aid free application. You know, my God, it's this thick. It's ridiculous, and you can't do it. And I forget the latest statistics, but about just over half of the kids, or under half of the kids in Alabama, just walk away from it. They just don't do it. They leave it on the table. They don't, and we're leaving on the table an awful lot of money. One of the things I'm trying to do, and Senator Alexander introduced this bill that he and I have been working on a lot, and when we get back, we're going to start pushing as part of a bigger bill to simplify that FAFSA form. Put it down to about 25 questions. There's no reason when you're sending something to the federal government, there's no reason why you have to give them all your tax returns, because they've already got them. Exactly. Okay? Exactly. And we can kind of integrate the information that's on there to try to make it simple, put it down to about 20 or 25 questions. That's going to get a lot of financial assistance to people, not always in the form of loans, but sometimes with grant monies that can help, because there's a good bit out there. Okay? All right, back to my wife. Yes, ma'am.
My question is a little bit, I appreciate your passion for the foreign affairs and what's happening in Afghanistan and Syria. But my concern living here in America is the soft targets that we're getting from terrorists right here in this country. And it's because of the laws that are so loose around firearms in this country. So I'd like to know your position there, because, we have to go to Walmart. That's our only way to shop. And the fear of being shot because we just happen to be in the store and getting groceries is really scary. Yeah. And the fact that we're just yelling Second Amendment forever, and nobody's trying to take away anybody's guns. I'm from Alabama, my folks hunt, and so misunderstanding. But there's got to be a limit somewhere that says, let's make sure that the people who are getting guns are the people that should have them, who have the legal right to have them.
Yes, ma'am. I
And
agree.
make that look right.
I'm really happy to answer that question. I gave my, first of all, you phrased the question in an interesting way. No, it really was. No, it was, what I picked up on and what others might not have, you talked about the soft targets that terrorists are attacking every day. Most of these are homegrown terrorists. These are not folks in a Muslim country coming over here. They're our people, okay, that are attacking folks, and we need to recognize that, and we need to treat it the way it is. Now let's talk about gun violence, and that's how I talk about guns in terms of gun violence. I will tell you that last year, making speeches on the floor of the Senate are a big deal for a new senator. You're supposed to be seen and not heard for a while. Sometimes they do it for 6 months, sometimes as much as a year. It only took me about 3 months before I said, I got to get up there. And I did my maiden speech on gun violence. A Southern Democrat, standing on the floor of the Senate, I had about 35 of my colleagues out there. And it was about 2 weeks after Parkland. And that happened that day, we had a program, and this young Parkland student who was there as an advocate was part of that program, so I invited him to sit with my wife in the gallery. And I talked about, the fact that I'm a Second Amendment kind of guy. I've got guns, I'm a hunter, but there's more to firearms in Alabama and places than just hunting. I hear my colleagues all the time saying, well, you don't need this to hunt, you don't need that to hunt, but they don't really realize that some of us just like to go shoot. We just like to take a gun out and go to target practice, and we go to a range and we shoot. But at the same time, we've got to understand that 40,000 people a year die every year in this country when a firearm discharges. 40,000 people. Most of those are suicides. About 25,000 of those are suicides. We don't talk about that as much when we're talking about gun violence. But that is the biggest cause of gun deaths, is suicide. So the things that I proposed, I said then, and I've said them since, that you've heard a little bit more about after Dayton and El Paso, or what I call common sense things to do. And the common sense things to do, I think the American public wants, I think Alabamians would like to see. And that is extended background checks. You make some exceptions. You make exceptions if I want to give or sell my son a gun, I'll be able to do it, unless he's a convicted felon. Now, if you knew my son, there would be some people say he shouldn't have it. I don't know, I think the NRA is trying to block me out. Is that me? Am I doing this? So, I think extended background checks with the appropriate safeguards and exceptions is important. We can take the existing laws and close some loopholes. There's two big ones. One's called the boyfriend loophole. Things were different when they first passed the domestic violence restriction years and years ago, and now there's a lot. We need to expand that because so many gun deaths occur because of domestic violence. That's another one. There's what's known as the Charleston Loophole. Dylan Roof killed 9 people in a church in Charleston, South Carolina, because when he went to get a gun, his background check was held up, and he couldn't get that background check completed for about 2 or 3 weeks. I think he would have failed it, but the fact is there's a loophole that allows the dealer to go ahead and give him that gun after 3 days. And expecting that if his background checks come back, they'll go back and get it. Give me a break. So we talked about that, changing that. I think that a number of states, including the state of Florida, Rick Scott, the Republican senator now, was governor, passed and signed into law an extended, what they call red flag laws, the extreme risk laws. Now those laws protect people. But they give families, they give law enforcement, they give neighbors when they see something that's just not right. They give them an opportunity to try to help protect the community and people from themselves. But there's still due process involved. This is not where you can walk up to the city clerk's office over here and say, so-and-so's acting weird, we need to go take his guns. That just doesn't happen. There's got to be a judge involved, there's got to be a proceeding. Those have been shown to work. I think that's a common sense. The one thing that I've been pushing a lot since last year is some funding to actually study gun violence. The Center for Disease Control, CDC, for 4 years has been prohibited from studying gun violence. Congress passed an amendment called the Dickey Amendment that said you can't do it because they didn't want to know. I think politicians just didn't want to hear what CDC was going to say because then they're going to have to make some tough decisions. Last year we repealed that amendment so that CDC has the authority, but we didn't fund it. I've been pushing to get some funding over to the CDC to let the CDC, a pretty objective group that studies all manner of problems in our society, let them study gun violence, top to bottom, all across the board, whether it's mass shootings or suicides. Let's study gun violence in this country to see what and take it out of the hands of politicians about what we can do. That's a little bit longer-term solution, but you know what? Every time we hear a mass shooting, every time El Paso, every time a Dayton happens, it's always the fallback position. It's a mental health issue. It's a mental health issue. It's a mental health issue. That's creating its own separate set of problems in the mental health industry. But the fact of the matter is, mental health plays a role in a lot of gun violence. But if that's the case and that's their position, let's fund them, let's let the CDC study it. If there's a health issue like that, it's mental health, let the Center for Disease Control do it. I think those are common sense and pragmatic ways to do things. We have to be very serious about it. Unfortunately, I think events in Washington have overtaken us, and I don't see any real talk about this anymore until the next time we have a shooting and a lot of people die. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way I see it. The president initially gave a lot of great promise about trying to get something done. Even if it's small steps, I think the American people want to see some small steps to show that we have the courage. Because you can have all the common sense proposals on the floor that you want, but if you don't have the courage to put them out there and vote on them, they're not going to do it. They're just pieces of paper. So those are kind of the places where I think we can get some of those done if that Mitch McConnell put them on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Okay? So thank you. Yes, ma'am, and way in the back.
My question is in regard to the mentally ill. In the state of Alabama, the mental health institutions were closed, such as Mount Mead. So what happened is they released the mental health population in the communities, put them in apartments or in places where they might have someone to monitor them. But
where they end up is primarily in jail.
yeah, that's where they end up, because if they're mentally ill, it's very difficult for them to take their medicine, or get them to take their medicine in a mental health facility. It's certainly, very easy for them not to take it at home, or miss their medication. Seeing that problem is just reoccurring. So you've got mentally ill being abused in some situations. You've got them walking the streets in some situations. You've got them involved in problems.
It's one of the biggest problems in America.
Then they're put in jail. They're put in jail.
Yeah.
They're put in jail, and that's not helping anything. So what is going to be done? Obviously, those mental institutions have been there for years, and they might not have been perfect. But is anybody doing any research or follow-up to see what impact it has had on, I know Alabama by closing them.
I know there's a lot of research being done. I can't tell you all on the tip of my tongue. Mental health is a huge problem. It is one of the biggest problems from top to bottom in the state. It's a problem across this country. It affects businesses. It affects schools. It affects jails and criminal justice, all of them. There's a lot that's being done and a lot to be studied. I wish I could give you an answer. What happened, as you said, and you said it spot on, the state of Alabama, as well as other states around the country, decided we're going to get out of this business and put money somewhere else. And so they closed these institutions. And there were some real problems with those institutions. Instead of trying to fix them and do it right, they just shut them all down. And so now that we've got folks that we've got to take care of. The second part of this problem, and this goes back a little bit to the gun issue too, there is such a stigma attached to any of this, and people are reluctant to come forward and get treatment. That's a problem. All of this talk about mental health and gun violence is making that worse because people don't want to come forward with any kind of issue. So we're trying to figure out ways. We don't have enough bed space for mental health folks to have a place. We really don't have it for juveniles. That's a whole different issue. There's a lot of studies going on. I don't have them all. I know that a couple of things that we're doing on the health committee is to try to get services into the schools. That's one area where we can provide some resources at the federal level to get resources in the schools. Because teachers have heck of enough burden on them in trying to teach kids without the resources that they need. The last thing they need to be trying to do is diagnose and figure out the mental health of their students. So we're trying to get some resources there to do some things. It is a problem in the military. Within the ranks of the military, it's a problem for veterans. It is an epidemic that we got to do something. I just, today is World Mental Health Day. I was down in Bayou Battery with Dr. Regina Benjamin, and she was having this little fair, and the folks there had the mental health thing, and they were having people sign, why is it important? And I basically signed this thing, said if we can solve the mental health crisis, we can change the world. And it's a problem. It's going to take money. It's going to take commitment, but it's also going to take education with people to recognize the signs and the symptoms and not be afraid to come forward. The other thing that I think we got to do is a lot of our mental health professionals are not able to communicate with general practitioner doctors. There's these rules and regulations that I'm looking at that prohibit them from really talking to each other a lot. I know that sounds crazy, but it's a fact, and we've got to figure out ways that we can take a more holistic approach. I wish I had a better answer for you. That was a lot of words with not an awful lot of answer, and I recognize that. But we're working on it from that committee. There's a lot of concern. Both sides of the aisle are very concerned about the mental health issues. All right, let me go back over here. If anybody's got one? No, back over here. Snooze you lose. Yes, ma'am.
I think a lot of our problems with education and mental health and healthcare has to do with what's called adverse childhood experiences. We know that most of our brain is developed by age 3, but our federal government is spending less on children now than we ever have.
Right.
What do you think is the answer to trying to have more early head start, more programs for pregnant women and young children, more health care, and things that would prevent,
No, I think that there are a lot of bills. I can't rattle them all off, but you named about 3 or 4 things that there are current bills pending to try to do that. Our problem is I can't get them on the floor of the Senate. I'm on some of them, not all of them. I can't get them up there. We don't do anything but nominations hardly these days. We don't handle real legislation like we did when I was with Senator Howell Heflin. We don't debate bills on the floor. We don't get them on the floor hard, except it's an appropriation bill. Hopefully, maybe in appropriations, we can get a few of those things. I will say this. That's from the federal level. There are a number of programs I think that we can help fund if we can find the money to do it. Funding is always an issue. But we've got to find funds to help to do exactly what you said, either through the Department of Education or through HHS. And there are programs that we can fund. There's no question. You hit every one of them, and there are bills pending to do that. I will say that I think the state of Alabama, one of the areas of education that they've done a pretty good job in is early childhood education. They're doing actually a pretty good job. Now, I think yes, I get that. But they're doing a better job, and we need to expand that down. Look, it takes a lot sometimes for me to say the state government in Alabama is doing a pretty good job, so give me a little bit of credit. But they're doing a pretty good job on that in workforce development. But we do spend, it is a question of money. It is a question of money and resources and where we put those. There are bills pending that I'm hoping we can get through the Congress during this session that would address some of those very, very issues. The staff, we can get you some copies of those things. Because I am a big believer in both mental health, early childhood health, maternal health, all those issues. I could show you a series of things that I've got for maternal health and childhood health issues that I just wish I could get to the floor right now, because I think they would get overwhelming support, and we'll try to sneak them into another bill somehow, some way. It's a bunch. All right, we'll come back to you guys. Y'all being real quiet over here. Yes? No. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I actually have two questions.
Oh, no,
I have a concern about the payday loan places down here. How is it that there is so many in one strip mall, 3 to 5 of them? How do they get here?
They got here because the state legislature won't do anything about them, that's why. I can just tell you, there's been bills pending after bills pending to try to do that. As part of my church at Canterbury Methodist, we had a whole week down there in the legislature for the last 3 years trying to get the legislature to do something about payday lending. It is unbelievable. 400% interest. People just get these revolving loans. And I will tell you, the new, we were hoping that under the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, that they had this whole series of things that they were looking at and put out some rules about these payday lending institutions. And now the administration has decided we're just not going to do that for a while. So they have carte blanche. That is really the state legislature. There's a dedicated legislature trying to do some things, but at the end of the day, some of them have just gotten, there's a lot of money that comes in here in the form of campaign contributions and elsewhere that stops that. But it is a huge problem in the state. Yeah. I wish I had those figures. I had them at one point, but the amount of money in loans under those payday lending in the state of Alabama alone is astronomical.
Yes, it is, especially for senior citizens.
And young folks too. I mean, they get them and they just get them inside.
My other question though is, how do you feel, or what's your position with Governor Ivey wants to have additional prisons built in the state? And here's my position with that, and I've done research on it. Majority of them are privately owned, and the mass incarceration. Why is it that we could not invest in getting programs, even if a person has committed a crime or whatever, to rehabilitate that person and give them an opportunity when they come out of prison? They're identified as ex-felons, meaning they've done the time. Someone should be able to hire these individuals.
I agree with you. I'm not a fan of private prisons at all. I think they can keep people there. We need to build some new prisons. That doesn't they need to be in addition to the ones we got, because I did a lot of work in the criminal justice arena, and we got some prisons that are horrible. And they need to be replaced. I think there's a lot of criminal justice reform and prison reform that needs to take place in the state and across this country. In the Congress last year, we passed the First Step Act that would try to do those things, to try to get people to not be in prison in the first place, to give them other chances and second chances and opportunities without having to go to prison. Sometimes not even having that felony conviction on their record. There's a lot of things I think that the state can do. They're just slow to do it. We've got a sentencing commission now. And I've traveled around the state. There's a lot of judges around this state that do a real good job of trying to find alternative ways of putting somebody in prison. There's a lot of, there's veterans courts, there's drug courts, there's all manner of things that I think the state can do, the feds can help with to try to stop that. I just don't like the idea of private prisons, but having said that, the state hadn't done too good a job lately. If you read the report that came out, this past year, that the Department of Justice, a very conservative Trump Department of Justice, put out a report that was pretty damning about the Alabama prison system. We got to do a better job. From a federal standpoint, we can, about the only thing we can affect is grant monies. We can give grants to do some things and try to set an example. I think the First Step Act is a great example. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to your state officials. It's going to come down to the governor, the lieutenant governor, and that legislature as to how those prisons are done. But I think folks need to watch it. I think folks need to watch that very seriously. The United States of America incarcerates more people than anybody in the world. And that can't be a good thing. We've got to find ways, and I think there's a lot of ways that we can do to get things better when people don't have to go to prison. Having said that, there's a lot of people that deserve being there. And we got to make sure those people get there. And once they get there, if we can do some things to rehabilitate them. You know, one of the things that we're looking at in the Help Committee, and I think there's a couple of pilot programs around the country about this. I'm not sure about Alabama, but we're trying to expand Pell Grants so that prisoners can be eligible and that community colleges and others can come into prisons and actually start educating people. And give them some Pell Grants so that they come out of there with some kind of skill rather than just coming out after having worked at a kitchen or a wood shop. They can come out with a skill of some type that they will help them get a job. And I think people have to be more open to folks and give folks a second chance and a second opportunity. Yes, sir?
Kind of following up with what she said, you mentioned earlier about the juvenile situation, and I know it's a federal problem or a state problem or a combination of both. But here in Escambia County, we've got 2 juvenile probation officers for the whole county. We've got 2 beds in Bay Minette, which means when these young kids get in trouble, 90% of them are sent right back to the home where that problem started. And I've read before, it's not totally apples and oranges, but old Fram oil field commercial, pay me now, pay me later.
Oh, yeah.
We're building prisons, but we're not doing anything to snatch little Joe up when he's 8, 9, 10 years old. We're just sending him right back. So it's a major problem I know in this county, and it's not just an Alabama problem. I see it in Florida and I see it elsewhere. But we're going to spend the money to build prisons, but we're not going to spend money to hire more juvenile probation officers or do something on this other end to maybe snatch that kid up when he...
Yeah, you know, look, one of the problems that I find when I come to a lot of these town halls, I get questions, really good questions like that from a U.S. Senator standpoint, I can't really answer because that's your local folks and it's your state folks. There are grant monies available to help build those facilities. There's grant monies available to help keep people, to train people and to do those things. Folks don't know one of the things that we try to do in our offices when people have an issue, that we try to search for grant money for them. We try to help them get some grant money. We'll always support grant applications, but we also try to just find the money because there's a lot of money buried in the United States government that's just there for local folks to do it. At the end of the day, everything you just described is a state issue. The juvenile system, it's rare that there is a juvenile issue with the federal court. We have some, but it's just not much. And we've got to do a better job, I think, in the state, but it requires that. And so if there are certain issues that we can help with to try to find money to help build more beds, to do those kind of things, to get more officers, and train them.
That would be a start.
Yeah,
we had a couple more juvenile probation officers.
But remembering that if we get more officers to train and do those kind of things, somebody's still going to have to pay those officers' salaries, and they're going to have to pay their benefits. And so it's a state money issue too. But I do think that for a long time the state and the federal government has not really paid attention to the juvenile problem until they get to be an adult problem. And there you go. And that's why we've got such a skyrocketing prison population. We're being reduced some. Okay, I'm going to go back over here for a minute. Yes, ma'am, you're back. Now, you're not answering her question.
Oh, no. We had the same question.
Okay.
No, I just want to know, how did all this spam card get in here? We pay the FCC tax on our bill, affect the elders, affect everybody. I don't know how these spam cards are getting into our country.
What kind of card?
The spam card, the spam card that coming in that affect everybody, all type of card that affect the we're paying the tax for. But
I'm not familiar.
the spam card.
Spam card?
Yeah, spam, the spam.
I'm not
I'm sorry.
calls. Oh, good Lord. You don't see how many I got on my Senate? Yeah, no, let me I don't know how they're coming in, but we passed a bill unanimously out of the Senate last year to crack down on them again. I mean, there is a bill pending. If there's one thing that I've seen in the U.S. Senate that is incredibly bipartisan, it's every bill to try to stop spam phone calls. And there was one passed last year. It takes a little bit for the FCC to get their rules and regulations. And the fact is, our technology's not catching up either. I mean, the government technology is behind the bad guys' technology. So we're having to constantly do. We had a bill last year, and I think there's another bill pending this year that will pass. That's the one thing that'll pass, because we get them all the time too. I mean, I get them constantly, and they look like they're coming from my mother or something. I mean, it's crazy. But there's a lot of work, and the FCC I do think the FCC is trying to work on it. But I will tell you that one of the frustrating things with the government is so massive, we're just behind in technology. We're always a couple of steps behind trying to catch up with bad guys, because they're really smart and they make money off of it. And we don't make money off of it, we spend money on it. So we got bills pending. It's out there. Yeah. All right, got to get back over here. Yes? It's coming from all over the world, these spam calls, and you're going to get more of them as the political world kicks in. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, as a parent, if I abuse my child, I would go to jail. However, the federal government has children in cages, and we have spent and diverted funds from security to fund the wall. If we took the money that we've diverted, we could very easily pay some of these student loans under the federal debt. I just wonder if anybody's really looking at that situation.
Well, they're not looking at it in terms of the overall debt, because the amount of money that's been spent is still relatively small comparative to $1 trillion worth of debt that we got here. We have spent money, and the president did move several $1 billion of money that Congress appropriated, and moved it out of the Defense Department. Congress appropriated money into the Defense Department in different things, including some things in Maxwell, not at Maxwell, but at Anniston Army Depot. The president moved those out. I opposed that move. I still oppose that move. He was taken to court about it, but the Supreme Court said it was okay. So he can do that according to that Supreme Court decision. I don't agree with it. I think Congress, in its wisdom, is appropriating money. Senator Shelby's head of appropriations, I don't think he appreciated it, that move. But the fact is, he did that. Now, we're also looking at other issues on the border. We did pass a supplemental of appropriation that got a lot of bipartisan support of over $5 billion to try to relieve the pressure on the southern border with all the detainees that we've seen, the influx that hit us in the spring and over the course of the summer. To try to move folks through there faster, to try to get more immigration judges, to try to make the conditions a little bit better. The fact is, when somebody comes and they're a refugee and they present themselves at the border for arrest, and that's what happens with most of them, we've got to figure out what to do, because they're coming here and seeking asylum. We've got to handle it in the most humane way possible. I don't think the administration has been handling this in a very humane way. I really oppose the separation of children that occurred last year. But we're trying to do some things on the border. I'll tell you, it's really frustrating, because every time you talk about trying to do this, somebody just says something about a wall. And when you mention the wall, people go to corners, and they don't like to get out of those corners. And we just got to get away from that and talk about doing the things on the border that would help secure the borders for coming in, and do it in a way that I think are consistent with American values. Yes, sir, you have one?
Yes. It is laudable that you are proud to be bipartisan, but you're the only person who's been bipartisan. And the other team is been dirty and hard, and they have their word tricks together. And I know you're not here as a Democrat, but there was a time when this state was a Democrat state, and people from all different sides played the Democratic game. And now it's the Republicans. And there are no alternatives, because people run into the Republicans because that's the only way to win, regardless of what they believe. The the Democratic Party in this state is so weak, spineless, not taking a stand. So how can you ever win anything if you don't build your groundwork? I live in Evergreen. They have the sausage festival out there. When Kay Adler was running, there was Kay Adler signs all over the place. Whether you can have a chance to win at all, you still have to show up. The Democratic candidate had no signs down there. There were people from all over the region coming to Evergreen. And so I'm wondering, you're so proud of being bipartisan, but you need a strong team that fights these other guys.
Well, that's a different issue.
I understand. I understand. You're here as a...
No. What I'm saying is it's a different issue than building up the Democratic Party. If anybody's watching what's going on in the news today, you know that I'm working like hell to try to build up, to have because here's what I think. I think that the state of Alabama needs a competitive two-party system.
I agree. I think the whole country benefits by having a strong, two strong parties, at least since that's what I was going to play the game.
Right.
But the Republicans don't even respect the Democrats enough to call them by their right name.
Well,
they call them Democrat Party.
Yeah, but
as a majority.
Let's just worry about what we can do, though. What we can do. I'm not sure what you're saying.
I'm trying to tell you what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that we're being polite and everything. I was at the barber shop just yesterday, and there were people in there who said, I don't vote because it doesn't matter. George Wallace used to say that's not a dime's worth of difference between the two parties, because they're not dealing with certain people who have issues that they want to address. And then these young people, I was trying to convince them, and one man was complaining about, well, I voted, and the person had more votes, didn't even win, because we was talking about the electoral college and things like that. But you have to do your farm work and be in the face of people who have real issues. And maybe they don't know how to go about it, but they've been so turned on. And then we're squabbling over people who are already involved. Most of the people don't even vote. So where are the efforts to find out why people are not participating? So I'll sit down because I know I've been close upon your show.
Well, no. I'm glad you said that. I'm just not sure what the question is.
I think that's the question.
All right, so here's my answer to you. Yeah, here's my response. I completely agree with you. The Democratic Party in Alabama has been spiraling toward extinction. We've had an incompetent leadership over the last number of years. They haven't done anything. They sat on their hands. They haven't recruited candidates. They haven't raised any money. They haven't been able to raise money for Get Out the Vote to have Walt Madison signs out there. We've got to change that. We've got to change that party. There are things going on. First step was taken this past Saturday to make that change. We've got to get that message out. We've got to have a competitive two-party system. Now, if part of your issue, if part of what you're saying is that I need to be as ugly as Republicans, I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy into that. I learned the golden rule, and I'm not going to play the same game that Mitch McConnell plays. I'm not going to play the same thing somebody mentioned Bradley Byrne in his Facebook. I ain't playing that game. I'm going to let them talk about how divisive we are.
That one that sounds good, but when the other teams playing dirty, I'm not saying you have to play dirty, but present yourself and what you believe in. And some people are not getting that.
Well, they got it in 2017. And they got it in 2017, but you know why they got it in 2017? Because we finally had somebody who was giving that message. Democrats hadn't been doing it, and I had the money to do it. And I'm going to get it this time. It's a question of resources. And when the Democratic Party of Alabama hasn't been doing anything to get those resources, you can't get that message out.
Amen.
We need to change that party, and if we change that party, we'll get the resources. We're going to get that message out.
There's a whole field of people.
Absolutely. There is no question. And we got to make sure that those kids that you talk to at the barbershop understand that their vote does matter. Elections have consequences. We can almost see that.
That young people, they were.
Well, I get it. It's one of the challenges that I think we have. That people don't think their vote matters. If they don't think their vote matters, then they just need to look around a little bit to see what's going on. I agree with you. I agree with your premise. The only thing I'm saying, though, is I don't want my party doing the same thing that I see in a really divisive way that the other side is, attacking me and other things. I just don't do that. I want to be a senator for one Alabama, not just Democrats. So, okay? Yes, ma'am.
Senator Jones, I have a comment that ties Dr. Robinson's comment about early childhood in the prison system. A few years ago, I learned that Indiana was estimating the number of prisons they would need by the number of third graders who could not read yet.
Right.
I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that we would put money in the prison systems rather than to give these kids reading. A few years later, when I did my dissertation, finishing my doctorate, there were like 6 states that were estimating the number of prisons they would need by the number of third graders who could not read, which tells us that we've learned that we lose these kids in the third grade. So we have to address that. As the gentleman talked about the juvenile probation, all of it ties together, and we got to go back and level the playing field when we already know what the problem is and solve the problem there.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. In fact, there was an article I read recently about the third grade reading level in Alabama, and it's not good. Exactly. And you know, I'm hoping the state is addressing the article, and I can't remember everything. I wish I had it now, but I don't. But it was talking about the things that the folks in the Department of Education in the state are doing to address that third grade reading. I think people are getting it. They may be getting it a little bit late, but they're getting it, and I hope that they're going to continue to work, because you're absolutely right about it. That was the whole gist of this article. The third grade reading level is a barometer of future success or failure and all. So I'm running out a little bit of time. Okay, she's got right here. Yes, ma'am. Anybody with a Doug Jones t-shirt has got to get called on if they raise their hand.
Well, I'd just like to say that I do appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay, that's good. Thanks everybody.
My concern is corporal punishment in Alabama schools. I'm a big fan of the school system. I visit them all the time. But it breaks my heart to see a child being hammered with a board or whatever. So, and we are one of the 8 states that still allow corporal punishment in the schools. So I would just like to know, how do you feel about corporal punishment? That's just my first question.
Well, again, I mean, you realize that I can't do anything about corporal punishment in the state of Alabama. That's a state board of education issue. It's your local board of education. You know, and I've seen folks going both ways on it. I have not taken any kind of position on that, because of my position as a U.S. Senator. I can't do anything. We're not going to pass a law in the United States Congress that would either outlaw it or permit it across the board. So I'm sorry to die, but as somebody who has been the subject of corporal punishment in my day.
Now, my next question is, I know way back in the day when I worked in the school system, it had to be a teacher-student ratio, meaning that if the school was predominantly black or more, you know, they hired teachers according to the ratio, you know what I'm saying, the ratio. So now, we have a problem with that. There's some schools that have 46 teachers, 95% African-American students, and only 6 black teachers out of the 46. So my question is that something that you can address, or that comes from the board as well?
I'm not as familiar with that. I will tell you what I'll do on that. I'll try to answer that question if you'll talk to the staff about it. But I just don't know the answer, whether or not there's anything in the federal rules and regulations or the statutes that we've got through our oversight of the Department of Education that we can affect on that particular issue. But I'm on that health committee, and we got staff over here. And by the way, everybody just almost over here standing, except the little guy with my friend Ryan who's got the camera for the Alabama. Ryan is what we call a political tracker. He calls it a field ambulance, but he works in a car for somebody. So he's with me everywhere. He's never in the car with me. I only let him ride with me. But he's videotaping everything I say and everything you say so that somebody can analyze it. So if I slip up, they can use it in a TV commercial or a social media ad against me. But it's okay. He's a good guy. We've enjoyed his company. I'll get you the answer on that, okay? All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to get one more back here in the back. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Paul Runnall. I'm from Daphne, Alabama. I've been listening to everything we're talking about. I've been involved. I'm a pastor have been for 30 years in Dothan, and I've had 3 different homes for men that were either on drugs, alcohol, in or out of prison. And some of the statistics, I just wanted to share some because I think it fits everything we're talking about, especially our children. If we look at the statistics, children that do not have a father in the home are 5 times more likely to commit a crime. They're 9 times more likely to commit a crime, to drop out of school. That's what y'all were talking about, drop out of school, that 3rd grade reading thing. And they're 20% or 20 times greater to go to prison. These are our statistics in our country. In Alabama, the statistic, we are lower, actually percent-wise, than Mississippi and Louisiana, which is great. But we're at 31% of our children in Alabama will go to bed tonight without a father in the home. And for the mass shootings, out of the 27 greatest mass shootings, 26 of those people did not know their father. We have a problem in the home. We have a problem in our country. And I think most all of us are talking about it is our children. And I know that's not your job per se, but I know we do have a lot of good things going on to help these issues, especially the initiative you're talking about, the prison reform. I do go into the prisons. I can't go here qualifying, trying to, because I left Dothan to come over here. And so I'm trying to get into the prison system, but we do have some really bad prison systems. But I've been in them, and I go there and talk to these men, and I've yet to meet any that said they did anything wrong. You know, they're all innocent. And we've had a victim mentality for a long time in our mental health system. It was because you had bad parents or you lived in the wrong neighborhood. But what the truth is that we built a foundation on a bunch of lies. And that's our problem. We got to go back and look at it. I appreciate what you said about looking at some of these things for the mental health and that, because that's really the answer. But it takes courage to do that. So I appreciate your stand on that, and I hope we can continue dialogue there. I think that a lot of our problems have just been fighting back and forth, and we have to come together somewhere around something that is going to allow us to build a better Alabama and a better America. And I think that's our problem. And I hear your hearts, and I think everybody in here can agree on that. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, and that's a good way to end, because I will tell you folks, I travel around this state a lot, I travel around the country a lot, and I am still convinced that we have more in common than we have in divided. We just don't talk about the things we have in common enough. And if we can talk more about the things we have in common, we can get a heck of a lot done. And we need to be able to talk and have those dialogues. Those are so important. And so I would encourage everybody to do that. I want to thank you all again for coming here tonight. What night is it? It's Thursday night? Thursday night. And let me come and be here. Let me end. The way I often do is that, you know, I know that, you know, there are a lot of folks in the state, and I can't please everybody all the time. But I try to get around here, try to do as much as I can to represent the people of the state the best way I can. Every day when I go into the U.S. Senate, I am so proud to be there. I'm in my old boss, Howell Heflin seat. I'm so honored to be there, to have this opportunity, one of only 100 men and women in the United States Senate. It is a task that I take very, very seriously, because when I walk onto that floor, I'm not only honored to be there, I'm thinking about you. I'm not thinking about the next speech. I'm not thinking about the next hearing that I got to do. I'm thinking about what it is I'm going to do for the people of this state that day and the next day and the day after. So thank you all. This has always been informative. I'm sorry I can't answer all the questions, but I really will take a lot of this back. We always do. The staff does a great job. I thank you so much for coming here tonight. I look forward to getting back to working, and I look forward, it's great to see some old friends back there. I'm just so glad Jack Hines didn't raise his hand to ask me a question. Just a minute.